welcome back. It's still Business Morning here on Channels Television. With the level of infrastructural gap on the continent, of course, there have been innovative ways to deal with it. One of its major one has been PPP, Public-Private Partnership. And now the Private Infrastructure Development Group, PIDG, through its Project Development Solution, Infraco, we know Infraco, they've exited the preference share investments in InfraCredit. Now, InfraCredit, of course, is the Nigerian arm or Nigerian body that's supposed to be a vehicle for local currency financing of infrastructural development in the country. And PIDG is an arm or from the United Kingdom that invested in it. And now they've exited and they made good profits. So let's find out perhaps some of those details that you may want to know when it comes to investing in infrastructural development in Nigeria. Is it a good deal or not? We hear it from someone who has a first-hand experience, and we have the Chief Executive Officer of Private Infrastructure Development Group, Mr. Philip Valau, joins us virtually from Switzerland. Mr. Valau, good morning and welcome to the program.
Thank you, and good morning to you.
Great. So you have had to invest and work with the Nigerian government in the area of infrastructural funding. Could you share with us the experience, the good, the bad, the ugly, so we can learn from it?
Actually, I'll probably just focus on the good because it has been a wonderful experience. Starting in 2017, working with the Nigerian Sovereign Investment Authority to jointly set up InfraCredit Nigeria. And you fast forward today, 8 years ago, there were no pension funds investing in the infrastructure asset class in Nigeria. Mostly they were investing in government securities. And when you fast forward today, you have over 20 pension funds that are invested in that asset class. And working with the regulators back then in Nigeria, they were allowed to invest up to 15% of their capital in the infrastructure asset class. So it's been quite a, I must say, a positive journey, and the ability for InfraCredit to continue to grow and attract capital on its growth journey. So for me, it's very difficult to focus on the bad and the ugly because it's basically been a very good story.
But would you say enough local investors are participating in this space where you have participated and you now have good stories about?
I think we have good stories, and InfraCredit, for those who follow it, will be able to look at the various bond issuance that are taken up by pension funds and they're guaranteed by InfraCredit, which have allowed the development of infrastructure assets. And more importantly, perhaps, is the example that Nigeria has set by setting up InfraCredit and the positive results. Other countries and neighboring countries have taken notice. And so it's no surprise today that working with InfraCredit, we're looking at other markets that could be developed in Ghana, in the West African Francophone zone, in Southern Africa. So the model that we set up with NSIA in Nigeria 8-9 years ago, and because of the results that have been achieved, people have taken note on the continent.
So, I mean, the infrastructural gap is not yet closed. Can we expect more from PIDG?
Indeed, if you look at 2025, we had a record year. We deployed over $1 billion through the various instruments, whether it's guarantees, equity, and debt, and we expect to double that. So yes, we expect to continue to play a role given the unmet needs in Nigeria, but elsewhere in sub-Saharan Africa.
What areas can we expect?
Power will continue, electricity will continue to be a critical piece. When we know that over 600 million people do not have access to electricity, that has to be an emphasis for us, but for other players as well. Water is also, the digital is increasingly important. So there are various areas and sectors that we will continue to focus on.
So for you and for other potential investors who are watching this program, what advice would you give them if they were interested or they thought, oh, PIDG has made good its participation in InfraCredit? What can they do? What should they look out for?
I think the biggest message for me is in regards to perceptions of risk. As you will know, whether it's Nigeria or other neighboring countries, the perception of risk continues to be high. despite the fact that data after data shows that the loss rates are low. They're lower than in more advanced economies, and recovery rates are higher. So for me, one of my key day-to-day jobs is bashing that risk perception that continues to persist.
So you think perhaps the government should give more attention to dealing with the perception of risk, because you seem to be saying that the perception of risk is worse than the risk itself in the case of Nigeria.
Nigeria and more broadly. So yes, and the government does obviously play a role there, but institutions like us also have a role to play. And I think companies that have had success, they also have a role and a responsibility to get the word out, because bad stories sell well, but the good stories people take for granted, and we need to get those good stories out.
And what more do you think can be done in the area of innovative financing to accelerate infrastructural development in Nigeria and even Africa, because it's actually an African challenge?
Our key focus for us has been, and when you see in particular the drop in overseas development assistance, you see the drop in some of the players that typically would invest in Africa have retreated or have put investments on hold. For me, it's about localizing solutions. There's plenty that we can do in Nigeria and on the rest of the continent with local solutions and domestic institutions, as we've done in Nigeria with InfraCredit. Although that's a drop in the bucket, there's considerably more that we can do in terms of innovative finance by tapping into local markets and developing those local capital markets.
Would that be the capital market?
Indeed, because when you look at InfraCredit, created from scratch 8-9 years ago, allowing over 20 pension funds to get into this asset class, you're effectively developing an ecosystem that wasn't there before, and we need to build on that.
Yeah, what about assets? I had a guest some time ago who said if Nigeria would look inward to generating revenue from its assets. I don't know what you think about that.
In terms of generating more business, or what?
Using some of the assets, the National Theatre, for instance, the National Stadium, using those assets better to generate revenue.
But that perhaps is a sensitive one that I would leave for government to opine on, I think. We've seen it in other countries, and indeed other countries in sub-Saharan Africa are going down that route. That is one to explore, obviously.
So you are partnering AFDB, the African Development Bank Group, to scale up domestic capital mobilization. And we know that the AFDB, they hold a lot of sessions and meetings, with captains of industries on the continent. What can we expect from this partnership between PIDG and AFDB? What can we expect this year, 2026?
I think when you look at the strategy that Dr. Ta, the new president of the African Development Bank, has launched, centered around 4 cardinal points, one of them has to do with the African financial infrastructure. So I would expect, and this is the work that we're doing with the African Development Bank, to put much greater emphasis than has been placed in the past on institutions that work across the financial sector and capital markets in sub-Saharan Africa. These are not just institutions like AFC, AfriExim, TDB that work throughout the continent, but equally domestic institutions that will focus on just one country. And so through a cascading effect, for us, working closely with the African Development Bank, it's about expanding that universe of participants.
All right, thank you so much for your time, and well, congratulations again. A good investment that you did right there. Mr. Philip Balau is the Chief Executive Officer of Private Infrastructure Development Group.
Thank you so much.